Just point directly at me, Andrew. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Gettysburg Battlefield. My name is Christopher Gwynn, and I'm the Chief of Interpretation and Education here at Gettysburg National Military Park. And for the next about 45 minutes, we're going to take you on a behind-the-scenes look at one of the iconic locations in Gettysburg National Military Park. That's the Joseph Sherfy farm, famous because of the peach orchard just across the Emmitsburg Road behind me. And you know, today I'm joined by some of the key partners that help keep this battlefield looking the way that it does, and that keep telling the stories of the people of Adams County. I'm talking about, of course, the Gettysburg Foundation, the primary partner of Gettysburg National Military Park, that actually help us to manage this property. And of course, I'm talking about Adams County Historical Society, who better than anyone else tell the stories of the people who lived in Gettysburg, not just in 1863, but since the genesis of the county. So I think over the next 45 minutes, you're going to be treated to an extraordinary look into the multiple layers of history here at the Sherfy property. It's one of 147 different historic structures that the National Park Service has to take care of, that the National Park Service interprets for you. So we're going to talk about not just the upkeep of the property, we're going to talk about the people who lived here. We're going to talk about the battle that occurred over this landscape on July 2nd and 3rd, 1863. We're going to talk about the multiple layers of history at this one location here within your battlefield park. And to kick us off, it's my great pleasure to turn it over to the President and CEO of the Gettysburg Foundation, who's going to talk about the physical battle that occurred here on July 2nd. That, of course, is Wayne Moss. Wayne.
Thanks a lot, Chris. On behalf of the Gettysburg Foundation, I'm honored to be with you on this sultry day here at Gettysburg, a day exactly, I think, like July 2nd, 1863. Let's first talk about the big picture. Where are we? As Chris mentioned, we're here at the Joseph Sherfy farm along the Emmitsburg Road. If you look over my right shoulder to the left of the screen, you will see Little Round Top and you will see Big Round Top on the southern end of the battlefield, and the Emmitsburg Road is right over behind me. That's Business Route 15. So we're at the southern end of the battlefield for July 2nd action. Remember the history here at Gettysburg. On July 1st, 1863, the Confederate forces met the Union forces west and north of town. And from early in the morning on July 1st until later in the afternoon on July 1st, a battle ensued north and west of Gettysburg, and the Union forces were defeated, and they were driven back to Cemetery Hill, which is off to the left of your screen, north of where I'm standing. And from that position on, the Union Army will gain troops that will come up onto the battlefield. They'll be brought up onto the battlefield, and the battle lines will form in fish hook shapes. Union Army on Cemetery Ridge and Confederate Army on Seminary Ridge. And folks, we're in the middle of those two ridges on the southern end of the battlefield right now. So Robert E. Lee will hatch a plan for July 2nd, 1863. And the main effort of that plan is going to be under the command of Lieutenant General James Longstreet, Lee's right-hand man, 42 years old here in the Battle of Gettysburg. And General Longstreet's corps will come down to the southern end of the battlefield, and they will attack down on the lower end of the battlefield where we're at today. Now, if you're Robert E. Lee, the first thing you're going to do on the morning of July 2nd is send out a reconnaissance team to try to figure out where are the Union troops. And in Lee's mind, folks, the Union troops aren't on Little Round Top, which is over my right shoulder, left of the screen. They're actually up closer to the center of the Union line. Reconnaissance team reports back to Robert E. Lee that that area of the battlefield is clear. So in Lee's mind, he's going to send Longstreet across the fields from Seminary Ridge, get right here on the Emmitsburg Road over my right shoulder, left of your screen, and roll up a portion of the Union line. And he wants to coordinate this with the northern end of the battlefield with General Richard Ewell's forces. Well, Robert E. Lee's plan is going to run into a snag. It's going to run into a snag because a Union general named Daniel Sickles will move troops out to the center of the Union line, off of the area around Little Round Top and north of it, right out to the heart of a peach orchard just over my shoulder, to the right, to the left of your screen, and that peach orchard was owned by Joseph Sherfy. So on the afternoon of July 2nd, this Union Army Corps, about 10,000 strong, supposed to be from Little Round Top to the center of the Union line, actually moves out here along Emmitsburg Road. So when James Longstreet's troops pull up over on Seminary Ridge, and they pull up with a pair of field glasses and look, they're going to get a big surprise because the area we're standing in is going to be swarming with Union troops. You'll notice the memorial right over here over my right shoulder to the 114th Pennsylvania Volunteer Infantry Regiment, wearing a very distinct uniform called a Zouave uniform, dressed as tribesmen in Africa. That's what that uniform is representing, and that's the unit that was right outside of this house here on July 2nd, 1863. At around 4 o'clock on the afternoon of July 2nd, Longstreet's troops will attack across here. Now, this is a family farm. Let's remember that. And so we can get the history of this family farm for July 2nd, I want to turn it over to Andrew Dalton, the executive director of the Adams County Historical Society, as we move forward. But you've got the big picture now. Longstreet coming over in front of me, behind where the camera is, toward this property at about 4 o'clock on July 2nd, 1863. Andrew?
Thank you, Wayne. Thank you all for joining us. So great to have over 100 people watching. We're thrilled to be here on the Gettysburg Battlefield with our friends from the Gettysburg Foundation and Gettysburg National Military Park. It's hard to really imagine that this was a home for families at the time of the battle. There were farms all over the Gettysburg Battlefield. This was not some piece of land set off somewhere where a battle happened. This was people's backyards, people's neighborhoods. And we're going to talk about the Sherfy family that lived here at this particular site. And right now, we are during the anniversary. This is actually the 158th anniversary of the day that the family returned to the farm and saw the devastation at the property. So for a little more on the farm and the family that lived here at the time, I want to turn it over now to Tim Smith, our historian, and we're going to look actually inside the house in a few minutes at some artifacts recovered from the property. But let me take it over here to Tim, and we'll get a nice shot of the side of the house here as well.
So, Caspar Sherfy, or Sherfy, as it was known at the time, with the grandfather of Joseph Sherfy, was born in Germany in 1735. He immigrated to America and married here in 1758. He resided in Maryland, not far from Tawnytown, Maryland. And there's still plenty of descendants of the Sherfy family that live in the area around Tawnytown and Westminster and Hanover, and several of those descendants are members of the Adams County Historical Society. Caspar's son Jacob Sherfy was born in 1769. He married Catherine Boserman in 1794, and at some point, probably about 1795, the Sherfys established themselves in a home just south of here. In 1805, Sherfy acquired 350 acres of land just to the south of us, which of course includes what today we refer to as the Rose Farm, the Wheat Field, Devil's Den, and Valley of Death. Some of the bloodiest fighting in American history took place on those farms. Jacob and Catherine had about 11 children. Jacob died in 1842, and about the same time, his son Joseph purchased the property where we are at, where we're located right now. Let's walk by the house and see the side of it. You can still look along the side of the house, especially above the windows, and see some of the battle damage from the fighting. So Joseph Sherfy, and again, originally as Sherfy, but by the time of the Civil War, they had started pronouncing it Sherfy. He was born in 1813, and again, on the farm just south of here. In 1840, he married Mary Hagan, and he reared 6 children, 3 boys and 3 girls. Joseph purchased the property here in 1842, and shortly after, he built this 2-story brick house, which stands today. In 1851, Joseph became a deacon of the Marsh Creek Church of the Brethren, which basically is a Dunker congregation. At some point, he began to sell peaches from his large orchard commercially. His orchard became well known. When he died in 1881, an obituary noted that he was an honest, practical, and useful man. He made out of the sterile acres a most productive farm, and as a pioneer in the peach business became well known for the quality of the canned and dried fruits put up under his roof and sold in the larger towns and cities. He deservedly stood in the front ranks as an intelligent and successful agriculturalist. And let's look at some images here from the collections of the Adams County Historical Society. Here is a photograph of the Reverend Joseph Sherfy from our collection, and here's his wife, Mary Hagan Sherfy. And again, they lived here at the time of the battle with their 6 children. And we have a photograph of this side of the Sherfy house. This is from the 1890s, and you can actually see in this photograph that the house at that time, the back portion of it was 1 story. And you can kind of see that if you look at the house, that there are bullet holes in the 2nd story of the main house, but the 2nd story of the modern part of the house here does not have bullet holes in it. They're just along above the 1st floor windows. And also, we have a photograph in our collection of one of their daughters. Her name is Ottilia Sherfy. And she lived to be 93 years old, and she lived in the area, and her account of the battle was recorded several times in our newspapers. And in 1938, at the 75th anniversary of the battle, there was a nice account in the paper. She described how on the 2nd day of the fighting, the family was forced to flee. And her grandmother, who lived with the family at the time, Mary Hagan, was also fleeing with the family. The fighting with the Berdan sharpshooters just west of us was just getting underway, and a Confederate bullet flew over here, went through the dress of Mary Hagan, and hit a post. She stopped, reached down, picked up the bullet, and saved it. And her granddaughter actually saved the bullet, and today the bullet is in the collections of the Adams County Historical Society, the bullet that went through Mrs. Hagan's dress. She says, Ottilia, in her account, on returning to the farm, they found the barn burned, probably from shelling, the house ransacked, and 48 dead horses on the 40-acre farm. 7 shells hit the newly built brick house. So you can imagine what it must have been like for the family who lived here at the time on their return. Let's walk now around the other side of the house. I'm going to tell you a specific story about an artillery shell or cannonball.
Well, we're walking too. I'll read one more quote that we have about the property from immediately afterwards. Every door, window, and sash of the Sherfy home was shivered to atoms. The barn close by was riddled like a sieve from base to roof, and cannon shot at every instant split its boards and timbers into showers of kindling wood. A shell burst under a large rail pile of rails and whipped them through the air like straws in a whirlwind. So now we're going to focus on another story, as Tim mentioned. I think we have an artifact as well.
Yes. First of all, I wanted to mention that, the house was heavily visited in the years after the Civil War by veterans who fought at the battle. And Joseph Sherfy, actually, who had a peach orchard at the time, actually produced peaches for many years afterwards, and he's really good at luring people onto his property to sell his peaches. And tourists loved the fact that you could buy peaches from the original peach trees that were here at the time of the battle. And he set his peach stand up along the side of his house here, and there were 3 cherry trees on the side of the Sherfy house, along the north side of the house. And actually, these cherry trees stood prior to the construction of his house. There was another log house that was here prior to Sherfy's ownership, and this was one of the log houses of the earliest settlers of Adams County. And there's illustrations after the battle, and many books and photographs were sold of the house. This is about an 1878 image of this side of the house showing the 3 cherry trees. And you might notice the back building of the house at the time of the Civil War was a small one-story affair on this side. It went to, of course, the brick section on the other side of the house. But this part of the house that you see now is not original to the Civil War structure. As a matter of fact, here's a photograph of veterans in the 1890s, and you can see that addition had been placed on by the time of this image. This image actually has another accompanying image, and I put them together here, and you can see sort of panorama of veterans in front of the Sherfy cherry trees. And of course, the most interesting thing about the Sherfy cherry trees is the fact that there was a cannonball in one of them from the battle. And there are, I would say, I've seen maybe a dozen or 15 different images that were taken by local photographers and later by photographers visiting Gettysburg of the cannonball in the Sherfy cherry tree. And there's a nice Tipton. Here is a nice Mumper image, local photographer of the cannonball in the cherry tree. And visitors wanted to see the cherry tree. Here's another image from Tipton of the tree showing the cannonball on it. About 1920, the top of the tree fell down. They actually put a roof over the stump, and for many years thereafter, the cannonball was sticking, and we believe it was right about here, was sticking in the stump. And in 1956, the cannonball was donated to the Adams County Historical Society. And today, we are the caretakers of the original cannonball that was in the cherry tree at the Sherfy house.
Right. And we also have an interview too from Mrs. Sherfy, somebody who stopped by in 1885, a visitor, who wrote, she said there were 48 dead horses in her dooryard and they had to hire help after the battle to bury all of them. In the body of a tree in front of the house still remains a solid cannonball which you can turn about with your hand as the wood is decaying. So obviously this was a popular site for early visitors to the battlefield, and we're happy to still have this cannonball in the collection of the Adams County Historical Society.
And the lady who gave us the cannonball actually gave us many more items associated with the house, and I think we're going to take a look at them now.
Yes, we are. Come on inside. So we're now inside one of the back rooms of the Sherfy house, and here we have on the table some artifacts from the collections of the Adams County Historical Society that were recovered from the property in the years and probably days, months even, following the battle. So you can see all kinds of artillery shell fragments, there's gun parts, canister, we have belt buckles and breastplates, canister balls, and then just an incredible number of mini balls recovered from the site. Tim, you want to tell us where these came from to the Adams County Historical Society?
These items, along with the Sherfy cannonball, were donated to the Adams County Historical Society by Beatrice Peffer, who was a granddaughter of Raphael Sherfy, who was one of the children who lived here at the time of the battle. So Joseph Sherfy was her great-grandfather, and it's just an amazing collection of items that was handed down to her through her family. Beatrice was a teacher in the Gettysburg School District, and I believe she was a principal of one of the Gettysburg schools at one time. Not only that, but the Sherfy family donated other items to us over the years. And we actually have a letter by a veteran who fought here during the battle written to the Sherfy family. And his name is Dean, and he was with the 63rd Pennsylvania. And he's writing in 1891. And there's a line in here I find very interesting. He sent the Sherfys his photographs, and he would like the photograph put on the wall, placed alongside of those of my comrades of Company K, 63rd Pennsylvania Regiment, that you have hanging on your walls. So Mrs. Sherfy had a wall with photographs on it of the different people that were involved in the fighting around her house. Wouldn't that be an interesting collection to have today? I don't know where that is. Now, like many families, the Sherfys made a claim for the battle damage that occurred here after, during and after the fighting, they made a claim. And their claim, according to this certificate, is for 1,578, or at least that's the portion that was allowed after they went over their claim and reduced the amount that they allowed. Now, I like to clear this up because I see this in many books and articles about the battle, and basically the local people here made claim to the state of Pennsylvania. The state of Pennsylvania never paid for their damages, and eventually they were sent to the federal government, where the quartermaster went through the claims, and if there was something that he felt that was caused by the Union Army, they actually paid the claim. But if your damages were caused by the Confederate Army, or if your damages were caused as a result of the battle, you did not receive compensation. But in 1873, I believe it is, this says January 1872, John White Geary, who was a general in the Civil War and the governor of Pennsylvania at that time, actually issued the certificates. And this is a certificate promising, when the state legislature passes an act to pay the citizens of Gettysburg for their damage, they'll actually receive compensation. But we have about 20 of these in our collection, and when the state legislature does actually pass this act, we are going to be the beneficiaries of all this money. So we'll see when it comes in. But this is a fabulous thing in our collection. So basically, simply put, the local citizens did not get compensated for their losses here on these farms where the heavy fighting in the battle occurred.
Tim, do we have any stories of individual soldiers that were here at the property?
We do have in our collection a manuscript that was handed down, and we did a little research on it, and there's a magazine article about it, and it says that during the fighting there was a guy named Captain Henry Rouland, and he actually ran into the house as the house was being surrounded by Southern soldiers, ran upstairs, jumped out a window, and then according to the account, there were 7 waiting bayonets at the bottom when he hit the ground, and he was killed. But actually, we learned that he survived, and he actually had a presentation sword, and according to one of the accounts, he threw it in the well before he ran into the house. And there is another account that we have that they did pull a sword out of the well after the war, and the family kept this sword. So we think it's probably Henry Rouland's sword. And off the top of my head, it's been a while since I researched it, but I think he's in the 57th Pennsylvania.
That's great. Thank you, Tim. And I want to thank everybody, too. I'm going to turn it over to Chris Gwynn from the National Park Service in a second here. But again, thank you all for joining us today. And we always love taking artifacts back to the site where they were actually recovered. And this is one of the most historic farms, undoubtedly, on the Gettysburg Battlefield. Just beautifully preserved. And you can see the battle damage on the outside walls of the structure, which is just absolutely incredible to think about. I want to end with one account that we have from another soldier, just kind of similar to what Tim mentioned that I had wanted to read earlier. This is a guy, Thomas McConaughey, in the 114th Pennsylvania that fought just near me here. And he wrote, "The Johnnies were coming in around the house, and about 60 of my comrades who had gone into the house or firing from the windows were gobbled up as we had no immediate support." So this is obviously the epicenter of incredibly severe fighting on July 2nd, 1863 in the mid to late afternoon. And of course the story of the family is so central to this as well, returning just days later to find absolute devastation on their property. So thank you for joining us again. This is the last video of our Caught in the Crossfire series. If you like the video, I hope you'll check out the Adams County Historical Society on Facebook and YouTube, and also check out the Gettysburg Foundation and Gettysburg National Military Park, who have an incredible video series that they've been doing over the course of the anniversary this year. So just for some final words, I think I'll turn it over to Chris Gwynn real briefly, because he started things off.
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, I want to thank the partners that have been out here today, the Foundation, the Adams County Historical Society. They allow us to do what we do best, which is do good public history here on the Gettysburg Battlefield, and hopefully bring it to you, whether you're here in person or whether you're watching online 1,000 miles away. One of the questions that I saw in the comments was, can you visit some of these houses? And the answer is, yes and no. Sometimes we open up these historic structures. So for example, just on July 2nd, we had the historic James Warfield House open to the public. In other cases, some of these historic buildings on the battlefield, again, the 147 that the National Park Service takes care of, they're park housing. Employees live there. They're somebody's homes. And really the best way to take care of these beautiful buildings, these historic buildings, is to use them, to utilize them. You know, one of the reasons we're here in the backside of the Sherfy house, one of the reasons it looks as beautiful as it does, and it's as well kept as it does, and it's as well preserved as it is because of the partnerships that we have, primarily in this case with the Gettysburg Foundation, who allowed the National Park Service to restore this building so that it better represents its 19th century character. That's one of the great things about Gettysburg. It's one of the great things about this community. We have so many wonderful organizations that help us keep this history alive. You saw a little bit of that today, just a little bit. You saw the wonderful collections in the Adams County Historical Society, and they've been so generous with their time, with their collections, with their talents, in telling the story of the people who call this battlefield home, which is all too often forgotten about. We heard from the Gettysburg Foundation, who are the primary partners of Gettysburg National Military Park, who help us to do the work that we love to do, which is sharing this history with the American public. And I hope you keep watching. I hope you keep engaged with all of these great organizations that help keep history alive at Gettysburg. And with that, I will say thank you, and I'll turn it over to anybody else if they have any final thoughts or questions. Regardless,
Chris, just let me thank you on behalf of the Gettysburg Foundation. Let me thank the Adams County Historical Society. We love doing things together, and I think it's great that the three of us are working together on this video. On behalf of the Gettysburg Foundation, we're honored to be the caretaker and help rehabilitate this very historic structure, and we appreciate it. It is not open to the public, so please don't come out and come and try to visit, but do go on a tour around the outside of the grounds, read about it, buy the many books that give you the history of this place, and learn more about it. So on behalf of the Gettysburg Foundation, thanks very much.